Smart and safe moving. I'm Lisa Oligas, and this is Newsmakers. 718 complaints. That's the number of people who contacted the Better Business Bureau in 2024, filing complaints about movers. Others fell victim to moving scams. In this edition, we learn about those scams and how to get the best deals while protecting your property and your money. Joining us once again from the Better Business Bureau is Regional Director Pamela Hernandez. Welcome back, Pamela. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is always so great. Now, this topic comes at a great time as students graduate colleges and prepare to move to their first jobs. And of course, summer is wedding season. That can mean moves too. So is this the time of year that moving scams kind of peak?
Oh, peak moving season, and it's all about supply and demand. If you're going to have more people moving, scammers are going to try to get involved in that process. So absolutely, it's peak moving season and unfortunately peak moving scam season.
Okay, so time to be alert. I have moved both my kids to and from college and even to an upstairs apartment for my son, never again, which would make anyone think the next time we're doing movers. So you tell me they're not heaven sent, so let's talk about the most common moving scams when you hire a mover.
Well, one of the scams that consumers tell BBB about is simply someone getting hired, usually off like an online marketplace, so maybe a Craigslist or Facebook, and they pay a deposit and the movers just never show up.
Wow.
Just an out and out cash grab, right? But what we hear about more often is you're hiring someone, professional, questionable professional, yeah, right, ish, and a host of things can happen. For example, you get a charge to your credit card, but it's much more than what you agreed to over the phone. Or you get your goods and all of a sudden they're loading up the truck, they're there to load the truck up at your house, and they tell you it's actually going to cost more, that the estimate wasn't correct, and they charge you even more per pound once they actually start moving things on the truck. And of course, at that point, you're so far into the move that there's nothing
you got to
you
go
can
with
do.
it. Yeah.
You feel like you're being held hostage. And speaking of being held hostage, that is another thing consumers tell BBB about, is on the other end. When the truck gets there, the goods are there, but they won't turn them over. They say you owe extra money, that it was more than they had originally quoted you.
Wow.
And they simply won't give you your goods until you pay.
That's crazy.
It feels like, you can imagine, how could this happen?
So are there red flags to see that, oh, hey, this is going to be a scam? What are those red flags?
There are some things. You know, when we look for somebody to move, we're typically looking online, right? We're looking for that moving company. And so if you land on that website and some key details are missing, that can be your first red flag. So for example, if there's no physical address or address information, or you don't find anything about their business license or Department of Transportation registration.
They should have both of those.
Absolutely. And a lot of legitimate moving companies, it's on their truck, it's on their business card, that DOT number. They want that everywhere. They want you as the consumer to know that they're registered. So if that information is missing or hard to find, that can be your first red flag.
Okay. And are extra costs a common part of this industry? I mean, can there be extra costs, like, oh, if you want it boxed, or, you know, certain parts of the delivery? I mean, can you know that this might cost me extra? There
can be extra costs, but that should all come up front.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So if someone gives you an estimate without actually seeing what they're moving, if you're moving a whole house and they give you just an estimate over the phone, that's another red flag that you're dealing with someone that's less than professional.
So typically they would want to come and tour and look at it?
When you're doing a big moving job, you want them, yes, to come out and actually see what they're moving. If I call you and say, hey, I need to move my house, it's 2 bedrooms, and they throw out a price, there's going to be some surprises along the way.
Okay, so just telling them how many rooms you have in an apartment usually should not be the way they calculate.
Not for a big moving project. You know, for example, let's just say you're moving a small amount of stuff out of an office. Someone might give you an estimate of like, well, it's this much per truck. Right?
Okay.
They might be able to give you something like that. But if you're moving a whole home and you're asking for packing, you're asking for all of the physical carryout, you want someone to come out and give you a professional estimate.
Okay. So we often think we're asking experts, but you say ask questions. So what questions are best, and are there any that can be truly telling? Like, hey, ask them these kinds of things?
Well, first of all, asking for that license, insurance, and DOT number. Those are so important. You're going to want those to verify a lot of things once you hire them, for sure, when it comes to that insurance. So just asking for those things up front will really give you a good indication of whether you're dealing with a professional. And certainly asking questions about, when they're going to arrive, how long things take. If you get answers you don't feel comfortable with, just move to the next person on your list.
Okay, good to know. So part of moving is first finding that place to live. Now, what do we need to be aware of when looking to maybe rent an apartment or house? What tips do you have for us there?
Unfortunately, scammers target renters heavily. Finding affordable housing is a challenge right now.
It is,
and
yeah.
so something like fake listings, that's something we see at BBB quite often, is scammers will take legitimate listings, post them with their contact information at prices that are much less expensive than what the property is actually being rented for. And so if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Unfortunately, those tend to pop up, those types of scams, on places like Facebook, where people are scrolling, they're trying to find that affordable place, and they're putting those listings out there that look legitimate because they are for rent, just not by the person you're talking to.
And they might ask you for a down payment or something like that. I mean, how are they getting your money?
That is a big red flag. If you've found a property that sounds too good to be true and they start asking you for a deposit or first month's rent before you've even had a chance to look at the apartment, the rental, that's a big red flag. That's another thing that consumers tell BBB about, is that they found a place, it sounds great, but for whatever reason, the property manager, the owner, they're not available for that tour. And then they put the pressure on you. This is going to go fast. You need to make that deposit. And unfortunately, they're also asking for those deposits sometimes through peer-to-peer apps that you can't get that money back. So that's another red flag. If they won't take your check, or they won't let you pay with a credit card, that's another thing to cause concern.
Yeah. So, and then a lot of times they ask for a down payment or a deposit. What's a fair amount, and what do you need to make sure to get that back? Because say you're moving from one apartment to the next, what do you need to know? Hey, I've done all this, I should be able to get my deposit back.
That's a great question. Typically it's kind of a first, last month kind of thing, rent. Sometimes there's pet deposits as well. And you want to ask what's refundable and what's not, because not every deposit is refundable.
Right.
A pet deposit may not be refundable. And just like anything, you want to ask questions, get it in writing, what's refundable, what's not refundable, and then do a quick little walkthrough, which is why it's so important to see someplace in person before you rent. You want to make sure everybody's on the same page. If there's a problem, for example, that the landlord agrees to fix before you move in, you want that documented to protect yourself.
Many apartments nowadays want you to do a credit check, but you say this can be a scam as well. So what happens that makes it a scam? Because it is very common, they want you to have a credit check and you have to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is unfortunately a very common scam, and it kind of dovetails onto those things we were talking about with getting you to act now. You've got to do this, you've got to pay me now to do this credit check. But what the scammers typically do is they're asking people to go do their own credit check at a third-party site. So if a landlord wants to do a credit check, they have a system for doing that. They may charge you for it, but they're going to do it. The scammers say, I want you to go to this site and pay over here to do the credit check. And that's the little nuance in what the scammers are doing versus a legitimate landlord would do for a credit check for a rental.
So you want to be making contact with that landlord.
Right. The landlord should be taking care of that. If they want that credit check, they're going to do that.
Yeah. So what are the red flags on a rental that seems like a really good price?
Well, again, what is the listing in the area? What do those listings look like? What do rents typically go for in that area that you're looking at? And also, take a look around. You can, if you can't see the outside of the property right away, you can go and look for listings online. I mean, Google Earth, you can see what a property looks like, right?
Right, they even have virtual tours.
You absolutely can go do that. So check it out, see if it all makes sense, see if it all adds up. If you see a property out there listed multiple times with multiple contacts, if you do an internet search, that can be another big red flag. Somebody has taken that photograph and taken that listing and they're putting it out under different names, trying to get people to pay before they see the property.
If you're not going to an apartment complex, the older cities have 4-family flats, duplexes. Are the standards really typically the same? Should you expect the same kind of idea of a down payment?
Of course, if you're renting, somebody, the landlord, the property manager, they ask for those things. That's very normal. You just want to protect yourself and make sure that it's not out of the ordinary.
Can't we trust those that are posted on social media?
You've got to do your research. You absolutely have to find out who that legitimate property owner is. A lot of property records are accessible to the public. You can find out who really owns that listing if you have any concerns. And again, if they're not able to meet you, they want money before you actually physically see that, or someone you trust. If maybe you're moving for a job, get someone you trust to go physically look at that property and make sure that it actually exists. Make sure it's not a house that's up for sale. That's another common rental scam. It's a house that's up for sale, and the scammer takes that information and puts it out there to try to rent it and take people's money and sometimes their personal information.
Wow. And talking about information, what are you expected to give to a landlord? I mean, some might ask for your social security number. Do you have to give that?
If you're doing the credit check, they're going to need that information. So that is part of the process. So you absolutely have to be careful to verify that you're dealing with a legitimate landlord or property manager before you start turning over that information.
So it helps if you've met them. That's
Absolutely,
really important.
absolutely.
Okay. Is it safe if you're renting from someone who doesn't live in town?
Again, you've got to go through the steps to verify that they're the actual property manager or owner. Some of that information is public, and you still want somebody to look at that property for you. So trying to find someone that you can trust can go do that. And even if you're on the phone, you're doing a FaceTime with them, and you're walking around together, you just need to see that that physically exists.
Sounds good. All right, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, Pamela gives us advice on how to pick a trustworthy mover and making a moving plan. We'll be back.
Every new day at Missouri Southern State University opens the door to meaningful opportunities.
Immersive learning, health and life sciences, global education.
These three pillars form the foundation of our mission.
I've always learned best by doing. When I could shape ideas with my own hands, everything clicked.
I enjoy helping others, but I never considered what it could look like as a career.
I grew up in a rural area where people rarely traveled abroad, and I always wondered what waited beyond my small town.
Here I discovered what I can do and who I can become.
Seeing the world through unique perspectives has reshaped how I view my place in it.
At Missouri Southern, we grow and change with purpose.
And that growth shapes who we become.
What begins on this campus moves into studios, hospitals, conference rooms, and communities across the state and around the globe.
This is Missouri Southern State University. Explore boldly.
Care deeply.
Impact globally.
One expanded mission,
Built with lion pride.
You are too tired to move all your stuff or your college student stuff and want help from a mover, but how do you know if they're legit? Welcome back to Newsmakers. We find out from today's guest, BBB Regional Director Pamela Hernandez. Welcome back. Great information so far on moving scams. Now we need to know how to do it right. And it can be a tough decision to say, I will pay somebody to move my stuff. So when we decide to do that, where do we look to find the professionals?
Well, you're right. It absolutely can be a tough decision. I know I haven't moved in 20 some years. I'm definitely hiring someone. You can start with that referral process. I mean, who do you know in your circle of trust that has used a mover recently? And that is a great place to start to get some recommendations. And then from that list of recommendations, you can start to go a little bit deeper. You know, BBB.org is a great place to start, that you can take that information, put in the company's name, and see what the experience of a lot of other consumers are. Because maybe your friend had a great experience, but they're the 1 out of 10 that had the great experience. And so you want to look at the reviews, see what other folks have said. You know that reviews at BBB.org have been verified. You can see their rating, their accreditation status, and if they've had any complaints, what have they done about those complaints? Because nobody's perfect. Accidents happen. Did the moving company, did they take care of the person and do their best to make it right?
So when hiring them, what should we expect to get in writing?
Well, you want to go beyond just that estimate. So you want details, for example, about what does their insurance cover. Typically, they're not going to cover valuables like jewelry. So you want to make sure that you bring those with you because their policies are probably not going to cover that. And you want to verify, we talked about that DOT, Department of Transportation number. You can go to the Department of Transportation's website and verify that that's legitimate. So you want to double check that as well. For bigger moves, you want to understand if the person you hired is the broker or if they're the actual mover.
Okay.
So this is something a lot of people don't know. Sometimes when they go online or they get a name and they go check it out, it's a broker who will then put you with a third-party mover. So you want to understand the contract you're signing, is that with the broker or is that with the mover? And you need to check references for both.
You want them, you think they would have a reputable mover, but you never know.
You never know.
And I mean, do you have to put in writing how many rooms you expect it to be? You want the exact amount and then date and time and everything?
You want all of the details. So you mentioned date and time. When are we picking up? When are we dropping off? What does communication look like during this process? Again, for a cross-country move, it's not a, we're going to show up, we're going to take exactly 48 hours to drive, and we're going to get there. They may be moving other people along the way. So you need to understand if there's delays, if there's problems, how are you going to communicate throughout this process? Another important thing to get in writing is a dispute resolution process. What does that look like when there's a problem? Because problems will happen, right? We already said it's not a perfect world.
Yeah, so what about when things get broken?
Right.
So the company, can they be liable for damaged goods, so to speak, in some cases?
They can, absolutely. And so what do you agree to? What do they agree to as far as that dispute resolution process? The good thing that you know is, one, BBB's there to help, but we're not a government agency. If something goes really wrong, so for example, somebody tries to hold your goods hostage, you want to call law enforcement because a BBB complaint takes a long time. And if they're BBB accredited, you know that that mover, that company has agreed to be part of that dispute resolution process, that they agree to respond as part of that. So having something in there about that if things should go wrong is very important to have in writing.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as moving insurance, and is it worth it to invest in that?
You know, it can be, because like I said, the moving company has insurance, but not everything is covered.
Right.
It's only covered up to certain limits. So it can be helpful to talk to your insurance agent, to talk specifically about what you have, what you might be concerned about, to see if it makes sense for you to get additional coverage, or if that's in the policy for your old home while you still have it, or the new home that you've purchased.
You mentioned jewelry. Are there other things that you should take, like, hey, I've got to move this myself?
Jewelry, money, absolutely, but also think about things like medications. I don't know about you, but I have some chronic health conditions. I have a little back stock. I'm taking it all with me personally. Important papers, anything of value, especially if it can't be replaced, you want to take that with you.
So, and then some movers, will they pack it for you? Are you packing it yourself? Are there tips on, hey, that can make a difference as to whether it breaks in transit?
You know, it absolutely can. And some moving companies will, some won't. Ask when you're getting that agreement. It's going to, of course, cost you extra, but here's the thing, they're professionals and they know how to do it right. They're doing it in a way to protect not just you, but themselves. So if you haven't moved in a couple of decades, you're not going to be great at packing. So let the experts, if it works in your budget, let them do it in the way that's going to keep your valuables as safe as possible.
You talked about communication. Should you be expecting them to give you a phone number, a direct contact with the actual movers? I mean, you said it is good to ask for the time and in that contract. So what is the best way to kind of negotiate how they're going to tell you where the truck is at any given time?
You should absolutely have a contact during that process, whether that's someone at a home office that is a 24-hour contact. If you get the contact of the person responsible for your goods, this is going to vary based on the size of the moving company and obviously the scope of the move. But you should have someone that you can touch base with in case there's a problem on either end. You need to have that open communication.
Yeah. Now, this just popped into my head, though. Are you supposed to tip the movers?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I hadn't thought about that in advance, but I mean, a lot of times I know that they're not the company, they're employees of the company, but sometimes they're giving a lot of oomph to move all your stuff.
Absolutely. And, in all the information that we have at BBB, the information that I researched with other experts, I did not see one mention of tipping. So as controversial as tipping can be these days, I think use it as your discretion. I think
they may say they can't take it.
They may say they can't. They might appreciate lunch. They might appreciate pizza to go. Who knows? So really, that's really up to your discretion, because in everything that I've read leading up to this interview, I did not see any recommendations for tipping.
All right. Thank you. Time for another break. When we come back, you're on a budget. How do you get budget-friendly moving without sacrificing safety? We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Hector from Mexico.
Namaste, I'm Sukriti from Nepal.
And I'm Kevin from Sweden.
Did you know that Missouri Southern is home to more than 100 international students?
Most of these students, like me, came here without knowing anyone, and that's scary.
And that's where the International Club can help.
We plan fun events.
From going to the river and bowling,
To American-style proms and cultural festivals.
If you want to find friends from different countries, join
the International Club.
Big dreams come true right here in Joplin. We're Seroptimus International of Joplin. Through local programs like the Live Your Dream Award and Dream It Be It, we're investing in brighter futures. Join us at seroptimusjoplin.org and help make dreams come true.
If you're on a tight budget and have some friends or family to provide muscle, moving might be something you want to do yourself. That's what we're talking about today on Newsmakers with BBB Regional Director Pamela Hernandez. She's back with advice on how to do it yourself as well. Now, I have driven a U-Haul truck, and it is quite the experience. Packing it is the area where mistakes can be made. So let's talk DIY moving. What are the pros and cons of renting that truck?
Well, and you say DIY, that doesn't mean we're going to do everything exactly ourselves. We still have to rent a truck. Maybe we have to rent one of those moving pods. So we have to think about those pros and cons. So for example, I should not drive a U-Haul truck. That should not happen. That is not something, and you have to think about those types of things. If your friends and family are going to help you, you're going to need to expect damages, right? They're not professionals. Accidents happen, so another con is being prepared for that type of thing, as well as additional expenses.
If you're boxes,
boxes, gas. Are you going to need lodging if you're doing a longer distance move? So those are some of the cons, whereas the pros of, they know exactly how to do it, right? And when you get that truck, you may pay less than professional movers, and you have a little more flexibility with renting that truck. So that can be some of the pros of doing it yourself and renting a truck.
Yeah, you might make your own schedule.
You make your own schedule, exactly.
Are there other costs to worry about when you're renting the truck? I mean, do they even ask you to get any kind of insurance on their vehicle, or is it covered for, roadside problems? I mean, I could just imagine getting a flat with a U-Haul.
It's like renting a car. You have to think about all those types of things. And so when you're renting just a regular car, you're offered additional coverages, and sometimes the credit card you use to make the reservation will help you with that. And it's going to be the same thing if you're doing some sort of truck to make that move yourself. So you want to ask all the questions. And just like hiring somebody, when you sign an agreement to rent that truck, you want everything in writing, and you want all those details so that you know and can put that into the pros and cons of how you want to do this.
So what's the difference? You mentioned a moving container. How does that work? Do they haul it from point A to point B? What can you expect?
Yeah, these pods, if you want to use sort of a generic term for them, that is a shipping container that someone brings to your home, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility. You're certainly not driving the truck yourself, and you can load it. You usually have a few days period of time to load it, so it gives you more flexibility. You load it up, and then they take it off for you to the destination, and then they will drop it off, and again usually give you a period of time to get that pod unloaded. So it can be less expensive than hiring movers to do all the work, but it can be prohibitive in the fact that you need space to put the pod. So if you're moving into an apartment, for example, do you have a place you can put it while you're loading it? And will you have a place that you can put it when you're unloading it? And that can be prohibitive for some folks in their move.
Yeah. So what if you're downsizing and with this move and you say you have unwanted stuff? So what kind of advice for storing that stuff, or is it best just to try to hey, let's have a sale?
Whether you're downsizing, any kind of move, I don't care what move you're doing, you need to make it as less expensive as possible by getting rid of things. I have lived in my house for over 20 years. I still have boxes that were never unpacked in my basement. You do not want to pay to move things that you don't need. So do a really good clean out. You can certainly donate what you don't need. That's a great thing to donate things to charity. But you can sell some of that in online marketplaces and make a little extra money to help finance your move. Great way to save money and then earn a little money.
Are there dangers to using the online marketplaces? What are some safe strategies for us?
Well, just like any kind of online shopping or online selling, you have to be careful. You have to know what to look for. So, for example, consumers tell BBB about folks who, for big ticket items, for example, will try to overpay and then ask for you to send the money back. There's a little bit of lag sometimes with transactions on peer-to-peer payment apps, and the scammers are trying to take advantage of that. It looks like you got a $400 payment when you really got nothing, and they're trying to tell you that they overpaid for that. So you really want to be careful with those types of things. And then people out there who want your personal information, they say that they need that information in order to make the transaction. They don't need your phone number, they don't need your bank account, and certainly if they try to take you off platform. If you're on a platform, for example, like eBay, you've got protections when you stay within the ecosystem. If you go over to a WhatsApp conversation, you lose some of those protections.
Yeah. All right. So when should people consider putting extra stuff in a storage unit? I mean, like you said, if you're not going to really be using it anytime soon, is that a waste of money? What are some safeguards there? Some rules of thumb.
Sure, rules of thumb. You know, sometimes you have to move quickly, and you don't always have the time to think about what you need. So look for a reputable storage unit company. Again, bbb.org is a great place to do that. And then make sure that you have some flexibility in the terms. You know, if you can rent it by month to month, that's great. That gives you some time to go through the things, get rid of what you need, and not be stuck in a long-term contract and costs that might not be useful for you.
Yeah. So one of the things that can be a concern when you're renting a new apartment is when you get there, is it clean? Is it really ready? What kind of inspection should you do? And is there any kind of inspection checklist that you would recommend?
You know, you really want to go through and just look at all the details, right? If this is your first time renting an apartment, maybe take someone with you that can help you out to look for those things of what's working and what's not. Just look over things like electrical, dishwashers, is everything functioning the way that it's supposed to? And if something's not, get it in writing that you'll get it fixed before you move in.
Yeah, I know when my son went to an apartment, they had not done a thorough cleaning. My daughter was an RA, and she went through there and said, no, this is not his, this is not his. Because can they fault you for something that you may not have noticed? You know, as, oh, hey, there's a hole in the wall.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, I liken it back to renting a car. You want to make sure you inspect that vehicle so that when you take it back, they don't try to hold you accountable for something you didn't do. And moving into an apartment is the same way. You want to make sure that everything is documented. You know, taking a video can be a great way to do that. I do that every time I rent a car. If I were going to rent an apartment, I would do the same thing so that there's documentation of what everything looked like when you moved in.
Excellent, great advice. So where can people go to find out all this information online with the BBB?
BBB.org, everything from finding a mover, finding junk removal, to seeing if potentially that rental listing's a scam.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you, Pamela Hernandez, always full of great information.
Well, thanks for having me.
And that wraps up this edition of Newsmakers. Great advice from the Better Business Bureau. Check out the website, bbb.org/all/moving. Thanks to our guest, Pamela Hernandez, and thank you for watching.